At a secret warehouse on the Seattle waterfront, the investigation of an Old West legend is about to begin. It starts with a dead body. The mummified remains of a man known as Sylvester. Professors Jerry Conlogue and Ron Beckett have spent the last 30 years examining hundreds of mummies from around the world. This is their specialty.
This guy is in amazing condition. You know, it almost looks like a wood carving.
Unbelievable.
I've never seen a mummy this well preserved, that's for sure.
I think the most remarkable feature is his face.
He's recognizable almost, if we had a picture.
It's recognizable. He's got eyebrows. Look, you can see the pupils of his eyes.
And his ears.
You can see where they've just dried, but the shape is perfect. And the teeth, it looks like there's a central incisor missing. And I can't help but to admire his mustache.
I like it. I like it
Got a great
too.
mustache. His hands are also remarkable. The fingernails almost look manicured. I mean, they're just so perfect. And it almost looks like he was holding something.
Yeah.
An autopsy would destroy the mummy, but using state-of-the-art technology, forensic pathologist Dr. Richard Shepard can see inside.
As a pathologist, of course, I want to see what's happening inside the body, what's happening to the internal organs. And with this technology, I'm able to do that. We can see the skin on the outside, but I can actually also cut down through the tissues and look internally at the body. We can look at the internal organs and see exactly how they lie and how they are within the body. I mean, the preservation of this mummy is quite incredible.
So who was he? And how did he end up a mummy? Since 1955, Sylvester has been on display here at the Old Curiosity Shop in Seattle.
My father was the one that got him. He's absolutely the coolest thing we have. He's been very good for business.
He's really famous. We're not, but he is. The Wild West was pretty wild, so he was a pretty tough guy.
Sylvester is just a nickname. No records survive to tell us who he really was, but there's a legend that dates from the final days of the Old West, chronicled in newspapers and passed down to the tourists.
Now this is the story of the Old West, and it's a story of a man named Sylvester. And he was a dangerous gunslinger. In a little town way out in the southwestern deserts, they were in this bar playing cards. And somebody was cheating. I don't know who it was, but one called the other a cheater. And next thing you know, they go for their guns. The guns are jerked. White gun smoke filled the room. And Sylvester got hit, took a bullet. He picked himself up off the floor, and there was so much smoke in that room that they couldn't see. They tried to shoot at him again, but he got away. He slipped out into the desert.
Is the legend of Sylvester, outlaw and gunslinger, based on fact or fiction?
Don't shoot me, I don't want to fight.
Although sometimes embellished, tales of famous shootouts, like the one at the OK Corral, are based on historical events.
Was there violence in the Old West? Were there gunslingers in the Old West? Absolutely there were. We know historically who some of them were. Did those people have gun battles? Did they shoot one another? No doubt at all.
And notorious gunslingers like Doc Holliday really did exist. But can the same be said of Sylvester? Where does history end and myth begin? The first clue for investigators? What appears to be a bullet hole in the belly.
The story is that he was shot there in his abdomen, in the stomach right here, and that's supposedly what killed him.
And that would support the legend. We've got this great legend, and when you look at the hole is perfectly round. The surface is bumpy, but this hole is perfectly round.
So what kind of bullet could have caused such an injury? One of the guns of choice in the Old West for lawmakers and lawbreakers alike was the Colt Peacemaker.
This is described by the cowboys as having more curves than a dance hall girl. Colt Peacemaker, model 1873. It's one of the guns that won the West. It was a .44 caliber, so that's a big bullet. And that'll do a lot of damage. And they called this Judge Colt and his jury of 6. And she's got perfect balance, and she's awful good looking.
George Wunderlich is an expert in 19th century firearms.
All right, this is a 44-40 Colt.
Christopher Beeman is a modern gunsmith. Using a beef brisket, they're about to find out what kind of damage to flesh and blood a .44 caliber Colt will make.
All right, let's take a look.
All right, thank you. Well,
I think we killed it.
yes, we did. As you can see, it's a nice clean hole at the front, nice straight
What's
path.
interesting is when we first look at it, though, the hole isn't a perfect circle.
Right,
It's kind of an oblong, and it was almost totally closed. You know, it had a temporary cavity where it opened way up, and then as soon as that bullet goes through it, it closes. And that's what, of course, would happen with a human.
Yes.
Is you'd get a very small hole on the front side. Of course, the back side's probably a completely different matter.
Yeah, there we go. There's a nice tear out right there.
Yeah,
You
look
can
at that.
see where it all has been completely torn out on this side. And,
Absolutely.
everything inside of this area is probably extremely pulverized, so if this had been an actual gunshot wound to the stomach, it would have been grievous and a slow way to die.
When the bullet first impacts the body, it's going to make some type of a tearing in the flesh. It's not going to bore a perfect hole. The shock wave actually comes after the bullet, and it does. It tends to blow material out, away. You wind up with a much more jagged wound on the back end, and so you're going to wind up with an irregularly shaped hole.
So is this a bullet hole or not?
Let me introduce it, and then if you'll stabilize it.
To get a closer look, Ron and Jerry use an endoscope.
Oh, look at the image. Can you see it? That's a good shot there.
That's great.
Does that look like a bullet hole to you?
It's perfectly round.
A bullet that enters the body can have two fates. It can go right through and exit the body. But when we look at Sylvester's back, there's no exit wound. So this gunshot must have stayed within the abdominal cavity. But if we look at the skeleton here, looking for those metallic fragments, there's nothing. But perhaps of more interest is when we look at this wound, if we can cut down through the body, looking at the deeper and deeper tissues, as we get to this apparent wound, it's very uniform. It's a little cylindrical hole passing through the abdominal wall, which is not typical of a gunshot wound. Neither is there any bleeding around it. If we cut deeper into the abdomen, we can see that there's no blood in the abdomen. There's no evidence of any injury. So we have a hole, but we have no exit wound, we have no injuries, and we have no bullet. And so in my opinion, this hole in his abdomen wasn't caused by a bullet, it was caused by something else.
That's definitely not a bullet hole.
It's a stunning revelation, which now puts the legend into doubt.
So two things here. First, the hole is too round, it's too perfect, and the color around that, I think it's supposed to represent blood, is the wrong color.
Dried blood would not look like that.
That's not dried blood.
Yeah.
Old blood, dried blood, looks more brown and not red.
The evidence that we're looking at now doesn't fit the story.
Is Sylvester's story a fabrication? And if so, why would someone create the myth in the first place?
I think humans have a tendency to want to make myths and kind of believe in this fantastic legends and be able to touch a piece of that.
But does the real Sylvester live up to his legend?
Everybody loves a Western. It's the myth of the West and the myth of the cowboy. The thing about that big myth is there was a whole lot of truth in it, too.
So what is the truth? If a bullet to the belly didn't kill Sylvester, then what did? Among the cabinets and jars in a Seattle curiosity shop is the main draw and #1 attraction, the mummy they call Sylvester. According to legend, Sylvester was a gunslinger who died in a shootout. so far, the evidence isn't adding up.
That's no bullet wound. It's just way too round.
Yeah, and there's no reaction around it.
No reaction.
What created this hole is still a mystery. One thing's for sure, it didn't kill Sylvester. But there is another significant clue. A series of mysterious bumps on Sylvester's face.
Look at those nodules. There are just so many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Wow.
There may be one back here even. And they're kind of concentrated. So if he had kind of a skin condition, I don't think we would see him concentrated. This isn't a definite pattern. On the right side of his face, there are a number of what initially look like little bumps or blemishes. The strange thing, though, they're in a specific pattern. What's under those bumps?
As a pathologist, I need to know what's going on underneath the skin. So if we take the skin off, we can see that there's a whole series of marks and blue blobs scattered over the right side of the face and on the right side of the chin. Using this particular scan, blue is an indicator of metal. And the presence of these rounded bits of metallic material is typical of shotgun pellets.
A shotgun blast could tally with Sylvester's legend. Was this what killed him so many years ago?
What's happened here is, as they've gone through his skin, they've hit the skull with such force that the lead in them has simply splatted out against the bone as it struck it. But none of them have caused any damage to the brain, and so they haven't caused his death, but they would have been really painful when he received this injury.
It didn't kill him, but the shotgun blast injury is real. It looks like Sylvester did indeed live a violent life.
This had to have happened years before he died. That area around each pellet indicates that it was there for a long time, and the body had a chance to react to the presence of that foreign body, the pellet. They're so smooth over the top. In fact, look, his hair is growing out of this. So they've been there a while.
So why would he not have had them removed?
I don't know. That's amazing.
This suggests Sylvester never sought medical attention, choosing instead to live with a painful, nagging injury.
Some of these pellets have actually gone into the sinuses of the face. We've got at least 2 or 3 that have actually punched their way through the very thin bone of the front of the face here. And as we turn the skull over, we can see that there's at least 3 or 4 sitting here in the muscles of the cheek and in the sinuses of the face. And as I cut down, I can see that these areas here, these blue marks here, have actually gone deeper into the tissues. Now, once again, these aren't fatal injuries, but it's likely they would have affected how he spoke. He would have had repeated infections of his sinuses because of these bits of metal that are knocking around there.
The shotgun wound did not kill Sylvester, so the search for cause of death continues. And what about the rest of his story? What's supposed to have happened after the shootout? And how is his body so well preserved?
This is the desert. It's a dry, unforgiving place, hostile, desiccating heat. And if the bullets and the arrows don't get you, the heat will. This place is the devil's playground.
According to the legend, the fugitive gunslinger fled here.
Well, now we have old Sylvester. He just took a bullet in his side. He wanders out into the desert. The wind is hot as dragon's breath. And the lizards are all carrying canteens. And the cowboys are heating their branding irons just by aiming them up at the sun. And he knows he's in for a rough time. And about that time, he collapses face first into the ground, and he's a goner. And he starts drying and frying and mummifying. And we don't know how long he was lying there, but he must have been lying there for quite a while. A couple of cowboys come riding along, and they saw him lying there, and they picked him up and hauled him off to Yuma.
The legend says he was mummified under the desert sun, But is there any evidence to support it? He's displayed here beside another mummy known as Sylvia, and she pokes some serious holes in the story we've already been told.
Sylvia is an actual desert-dried mummy found in the highlands of Mexico. And she has a very, very different appearance. Her mouth is typically drawn open as the muscles relax following rigor mortis. So her mouth is open. Sylvester's is not. Sylvester's skin is very shiny. In a desiccated individual, your skin is still there, but it's dry. It looks almost dusty in comparison.
We're about 70 or 80% water. If you go into this period of desiccation, this drying, all the water is extracted, so things shrivel up. They're gonna lose 70% of their volume, so they're gonna look totally shriveled. Sylvester doesn't look quite like that. His face is not full, but it's not really wrinkled as though someone that's been desiccated. He's got almost a mahogany look. He's reddish, and he's wet in areas that the surface is slick. It doesn't look right. This is not the person in the legend. Something is not right here.
On the surface, there's no real signs of desiccation. As we cut through the surfaces, we can see into the body cavities. The lungs are there. They're beautifully preserved. The heart is there, and we can see the chambers of the heart with the valves inside them. Once again, beautifully preserved. And the liver, often an organ that will decompose fast, is beautifully preserved. In this case, I can see the blood vessels, fantastic. If the body dries out or desiccates, these organs turn to crumbly, amorphous mass. Sylvester's case, they're all still there. They're all identifiable. So something else must have happened to Sylvester after death to produce this beautifully preserved body.
John Austin is an expert in 19th century American embalming techniques. He believes he knows the secret of Sylvester's amazing preservation.
In the 19th century, as today, the principle of embalming is to simply sanitize the remains. So by sanitizing human remains, we ultimately achieve preservation.
Simply put, it's a process that replaces the body's blood and liquids with preserving fluid.
With a hand pump, I can then increase air pressure in the jar that forces the fluid out of the jar and into the arterial system. We then begin to pump embalming fluid into the arterial system and ultimately into the venous side of the circulatory system, forcing the blood out of the body.
If Sylvester was embalmed, there should be evidence of it on his body.
The human body begins to deteriorate immediately at death, and decomposition begins rapidly. In Sylvester's case, clearly the remains had to have had some artificial means of preservation applied. I'll begin looking for standard arterial injection points, which would confirm the method by which Sylvester was embalmed. And in this case, there doesn't appear to be any incision in the right common carotid artery, no injection in this location for the subclavian artery. And so the other point of injection that we would look for is injection into the femoral arteries located here in the upper leg. And as I expected, we have a left femoral artery injection, and here we see evidence of injection into the right femoral artery. It certainly helps to explain the excellent state of preservation, because clearly Sylvester was embalmed using some product as yet unknown, but the embalmer maximized the injection into two major arteries, injecting upward into the body and in a downward direction to ensure that both legs were thoroughly injected.
And it's Sylvester's legs that now have Ron and Jerry's full attention.
What's really fascinating down here are his lower extremities, where he's got this ooze, this liquid. It's not just shiny like it is in other places. It looks liquid. I think we could sample some of that.
They use an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, an indispensable tool when it comes to analyzing telltale residues and trace elements.
Okay, it's analyzing. Just keep it steady. Let's do it for a full minute, and it should clear up a little
See, this
bit.
isn't fair, Ron. I can't see the screen.
Got magnesium. Let's see, chloride, nickel, zinc. We'll look for aluminum too. Oh my goodness. Hi. The arsenic spike is phenomenal. Come over here. The predominant element in the goo is arsenic, big time, more than anything else.
It's almost off the scale.
I know. It's incredible. That's concentration. The spike just went straight up, and it went up early, so there's a lot of arsenic in that body.
Arsenic is exceptionally toxic, even in tiny doses. So why is Sylvester oozing this poison from every pore? New evidence shows that the story surrounding this legendary mummy is a tall tale. Sylvester did not die in a shootout or desiccate in the desert. Someone made a professional effort to preserve his body, and he's literally oozing with toxic goo.
Oh my goodness. The highest peak is arsenic. Incredible, off the map.
Arsenic is a deadly poison, but surprisingly, this is not what killed Sylvester. It's what preserved him.
Arsenic, since about the Civil War here in the United States anyway, was used as an embalming agent till about the early 1900s.
As more people moved westward, many of them were dying far from their loved ones, and demand for embalming grew. Arsenic was widely used until it was outlawed at the turn of the century, to be replaced by the much safer formaldehyde. That dates Sylvester's death to between 1880 and 1900. But who embalmed him, and why? John Austin believes an external examination of the body will uncover more clues.
If we look at the orientation of Sylvester's arms, to my eye there appears to be a consistent angle of the arms, which would suggest that they may have been held in that position as the result of the outer walls of a coffin. There is also a bit of rubbing on his right elbow, which again could suggest that the tissue of the elbow rubbed against the outer wall of a coffin. Given the orientation of the hands, you can see that Sylvester's right hand is fairly tightly clenched. There's no space between the thumb and the forefinger. But by comparison, his left hand, there is a gap, as if he might have been holding something. And if Sylvester had been placed in a coffin, perhaps for viewing purposes, he might even have been positioned with a bouquet of flowers. And that would certainly explain why the bones and the tissues having fixed location with a clear opening, and it would not have been uncommon for him to have been posed with a bouquet of flowers.
Ron and Jerry test out the theory.
That's a perfect fit. This just slides right down there. I actually think that this may have been a display piece. Some embalmer saying, look how good my work is.
It would make a very pretty picture. I'm coming to get someone embalmed. I see this beautiful specimen with flowers. I'm sold. I'm coming to this shop. They would use these mummified individuals as an advertisement of how good that they could embalm your dead should you bring them to me. This is how your loved one could look. Wouldn't you like that for your dead, to live in eternity? And they probably decorated them and put them in perhaps a coffin to display. And they were put in the window, sometimes even in newspaper ads. And that's probably Sylvester's origin.
But if this is how Sylvester's career as a mummy began, put on display by an enterprising funeral director, Ron and Jerry suspected soon took a surprising turn. In their investigations, they've often come across what they call sideshow mummies.
In the late 19th century, early 20th century, all the way up to the 50s, sideshows were very popular. I remember as a kid going into the sideshows, and they were always kind of interesting. You know, the two-headed calf and the 13-toed goat or whatever it might be. And perhaps there'd be a mummy, and that would really be a draw. Mummies have been a curiosity for we humans for as long as we knew they were around. If you had a real Egyptian mummy, you had a sideshow. If you didn't, you could get some embalmed individual.
Ron believes Sylvester was embalmed professionally and put on display. But a sideshow operator then acquired the body and took it on the road to make some cash.
But if he goes on the road, he has to have a great story. It can't be just, you know, a college professor, because who would come see them? So it has to have this story. It's a card thief. And he was shot in the stomach and died in the desert sand. Ooh, I want to go see that.
People are going to come into the sideshow, put their quarter down, and then touch a gunfighter. Wow, that's pretty incredible for a quarter.
Few tales tap into the American psyche better than that of a gunfighter in the Old West.
When we look at the number of television shows, popular movies right well into the 21st century that deal with this subject, the number of romantic novels, it almost is the backdrop to everything we are. This is our identity as Americans, regardless of where we live. In some way, we all have that little bit of cowboy in us.
In Sylvester's own lifetime, that Old West identity was already fading, to be replaced by industrialization and the growth of large cities. Opportunists like Buffalo Bill created an industry commercializing the cowboy myth. And legends like Sylvester have been a massive moneymaker ever since.
He is part of the reason we see the West as the gunslinging, lawless place where Doc Holliday's shooting people up everywhere, because that's the story we gave Sylvester. Whether it's the true story or not, didn't matter. What mattered is, how do you get people in the sideshow? He was a gunslinger. He was shot right here. And he died a terrible death in the Old West. And that's how they sold him. And he became the mythology of the good old days in the Old West.
But can the team uncover evidence proving the sideshow theory? It all comes back to the hole in Sylvester's belly.
This is supposedly where he was shot. A bullet went in there. But when Ron and I looked at it, it looked too circular. So now when we put the endoscope in, we see that there's this spiral pattern.
All right, we're inside.
Oh, Ron.
You see the spirals.
There are spirals.
Okay.
On that hole. What could have caused that spiral pattern? A drill, a manual drill. We actually drilled a hole through wood with this, went with the endoscope, and we saw almost exactly the same spiral pattern in the wood. Let's see if it fits. And I can't just push it in, I've got to kind of screw it in, because that's how it would have gone in, and it fits perfect. Exact fit. So Ron and I have looked at 7 sideshow mummies. All of them have fantastic stories, but you got to make the story believable. And if you take that 1/4 inch or 6mm drill, you poke the hole, you put a little red paint there, someone's going to come and look at this guy for a quarter.
Who is the culprit responsible for drilling the hole to turn a quick buck? Can new light be shed on the mystery of Sylvester? Historian Jeff Smith thinks he may have found the prime suspect. For 4 generations, this old and faded photograph has been handed down through Jeff Smith's family. It's dated 1892 and was taken in Denver, Colorado. It's the photo of a mummified corpse, bleached white by the camera flash and faded with age. But to Jeff's eyes, it bears an uncanny resemblance to Sylvester.
This petrified man is identical in stature to Sylvester. The legs are the same positions. The arms are in the same position. The head, the posture, the face are the same. They have to be one and the same.
Is this an early photo of Sylvester or not? It's certainly from the right era. And while the evidence of an old and faded photograph isn't conclusive, it just might point to the man who took Sylvester on the road as a sideshow freak. The original owner of the mummy in Jeff Smith's photograph was his great-grandfather, a man who went by the name Soapy Smith.
Soapy was not a good guy. He was a scoundrel. He was probably America's premier 19th century confidence man, con man extraordinaire. He had a big ego, which went a long way for helping him control the gambling underworld.
Soapy began his career as a small-time con artist, tricking the public with swindles like the shell game.
An operator of a shell game would place a pea underneath one of the 3 shells and move the shells around a bit and ask for people to bet on which shell contained the pea. Of course, the player never won. It was all swindle. There was no chance of winning. In fact, you couldn't win by accident.
From small cons, he progressed to bigger swindles, becoming an underworld king first in Denver and then the Klondike.
He was a very dangerous man. He was known to be quick with his anger and his gun. There are several instances where he did murder. Okay, this is a picture of Soapy's saloon in Skagway, Alaska. And that's Soapy right there in the front of the bar, and he's surrounded by members of his gang. He owns saloons, auction houses, swindle parlors, poker parlors, anything to make a dollar, a crooked dollar.
However it was Soapy came into possession of a real mummy, he saw a business opportunity he couldn't walk away from.
The petrified man was placed on exhibit in saloons and in tents for a charge of 10 cents, 25 cents for the people to view it.
But the real money in this type of sideshow racket was made swindling the crowd while they waited in line.
The mummified man drew in the people. So rather than the showmen looking for victims, the victims came to the showmen.
To create a big enough draw, it was either Soapy Smith or someone equally unscrupulous who took the drill and faked the bullet hole. And the legend of the gunslinger was born. But as the team has already discovered, not all of Sylvester's wounds are fake. At some point, Sylvester really did receive a shotgun blast to his face. What can this tell us about the real Sylvester, the man behind the myth? George and Christopher believe they can conduct a ballistics test that will reveal clues about the shooting, the shooter, and Sylvester himself.
We know that he was shot from somewhere over here to his right, but the real question is, how far away was the person when they shot him? And really the only way to determine that was to take a period shotgun and a period shell and fire it at different distances until we got a pattern that was similar in dispersal to the pattern that we see in his face.
We'll pace it off. We'll go 10.
Okay.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
What we really tried to do with this test was to use the kind of shotgun that was on every wagon train, it was in every hunting party, it was in every family's collection that came west. The double-barreled 12-gauge black powder shotgun, the one that you hunt with. And when we chose the shotgun shells, we specifically chose them to match exactly the shot that we found in Sylvester.
It did exactly what I thought it would do.
That's a tight pattern.
It is a tight pattern. You can see, nice and tight at this range, and that would have been a fairly close range shot.
What's interesting is if you look at the mummy, on his face, they're much more spread. You know, we have, almost 200 holes here, 100 some holes here.
Yeah.
He only has 20. So I think definitely he was farther away from the target than this.
Yeah, it's really tight at this range, so further back, that's going to open up a lot wider.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, that was 10 paces.
That was 10 paces.
You think we need to double it or triple it?
Let's go back to 20.
Let's go back to 20?
20 and see what happens then.
As the range increases, the likelihood that someone was aiming to kill Sylvester using this kind of shotgun and these pellets decreases. And if George can match the spread,
Wow, look at this.
he'll be one step closer to the real Sylvester.
Boy, we certainly opened up the pattern, didn't we?
Yes, 20 paces away, you can see how far this really opened up.
This area in here really gives us a good indication as to a possible range. When we backed out to 20 paces, the spread was much more consistent with the spread that we saw in Sylvester's face. So I'm pretty confident that that's the range we're looking at.
And George and Christopher are finding more clues in the pattern.
You can really see.
We're both thinking exactly the same thing. He must have been right at the edge of the shot pattern. When we start to look in an area like this, about the size of my hand, which is about the size of the wound to Sylvester's face, you're getting about the right number of shot in that space. So we've got a large concentration here.
Very small.
But when we get out to these edges, man, he was on the edge of that pattern.
The fact that Sylvester received the shot from the very edge of the spread suggests the gun wasn't even pointing at him. So maybe this was just an accident. Who shot Sylvester? And why? The investigation surrounding Sylvester the Mummy has once again turned to ballistics.
Why don't we take a look? I'd love to see the backside and see if we have complete penetration all the way around.
George and Christopher believe their shotgun test
Well, it looks to me like they all went through. I can see.
shows a pattern matching the pellets embedded in Sylvester's face.
I have the x-ray pictures here. Oh, look at that. Look at the similarities. You just even pick any one random number of these.
No, you're absolutely right. And the spread that we're seeing on the board is really just about right. And if you lay that out, it's just a little bigger than our hand.
Yeah.
The spread of pellets shows that the shooter was at least 20 paces away, probably outdoors, and it even suggests the gun wasn't directly pointed at Sylvester. Not really evidence of attempted murder.
And I think with all these small holes, the fact is we're talking about debilitating someone,
Right.
but you're not really talking about the ability to kill at this range.
That's true.
Whoever took this to Sylvester's face was not looking to kill him. This was not Doc Holliday going out to blow somebody's head off. This could very well be a hunting accident. It happened recently with Dick Cheney, where he shot his friend accidentally while on a hunting trip. He brought the gun up, he fired too quickly at something that was taking off, and he hit the man in the side of the face. This is not an uncommon occurrence in a place where people went out hunting together in many instances, and you may have had someone, you know, who simply wasn't careful.
A hunting accident is one possible explanation. But for Ron and Jerry, the fact that the pellets were never removed is suspicious.
Now imagine what it must have felt like. Imagine what it must have looked like at the time of the event. Splatters of blood, swelling and edema. It must have been horrifically painful and horrific in appearance as well.
When you see something like that, when they're just under the surface, the first thing that comes to mind, why would he not go and have these pellets taken out? The only thing that you can possibly think is that he couldn't go into a town to see a doctor because maybe he was a wanted individual.
Perhaps a man on the run. Or maybe just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Maybe it was somebody just trying to scare him off, shoo him off their land with a shotgun, trying to drive him away. Maybe he was stealing a watermelon, who knows? It's certainly one of the things that is not out of the realm of possibility and should at least be considered as one possible explanation.
A new picture is emerging. Not of a legendary gunslinger, but a man at the end of his rope. For many in the Old West, this is what life was really like.
You know, a lot of people came west and they had an incredibly lonely life. And the reason they had an incredibly lonely life, and there were actually a lot of songs written in the 19th century about this, because their intent was, I'm gonna go west, I'm gonna go to California, I'm gonna dig up 20 pounds of gold, I'm gonna be the richest guy in town, I'm gonna go home and marry my sweetheart. But they never found the gold. And they never went home. Or if they did, they went home broke. And for the time they were out here in the West, they were miserable.
Perhaps Sylvester was an outcast in life, at a time and place when the average life expectancy was just 47 years. But if this was his fate, to die alone, his body left unclaimed by family and friends, one last mystery remains. How did he meet his end?
When we look deep inside at the organs, we do see something that is important. And what at first appears to be rather insignificant white speckle provides a critical clue. This is calcium. If we look in the left lung, there's no signs of any calcium at all at that point. But if we look in the right lung, there are these white areas, calcium deposits in the center of the lung. And calcification at that site in the lung of a man from this era, diagnostically it's critical because it is a sign of tuberculosis.
In his day, tuberculosis was incurable. It killed real-life gunslinger Doc Holliday, and it's now the prime suspect in Sylvester's death. There are more clues in the CT scan. Sylvester's airways are choked with fluid, which suggests the end, when it came, was sudden and violent.
It's an erosive disease, and as it damages the blood vessels in the lungs, it may cause one of them to rupture. And that produces a sudden torrential bleeding into the lungs with blood being coughed up, spewed up out of the mouth in an uncontrollable way, and the individual dies. It must be one of the most unpleasant ways that I can think of to meet your end.
The investigation began with a mummy and a story. The Legend of Sylvester, the Gunslinger, is an Old West classic. It's got all the elements: a saloon, cards, whiskey, guns, and a shootout. A cowboy, tough as nails, riddled with bullets, stumbles into the desert, dies, and mummifies. But the legend doesn't stand up to scientific investigation.
That's no bullet wound.
The bullet hole is fake.
But look at the arsenic.
He was embalmed with arsenic before being taken on the road as a sideshow mummy. And his right lung shows symptoms of tuberculosis.
Now, tuberculosis is not a disease you pick up riding out on your own in the desert. It's a disease that is associated with living in close, cramped, probably poor circumstances. One of those situations at that time was likely to be the prison.
Although not conclusive, it's a more plausible theory than the legend. Sylvester met his death not at the end of a gun barrel, but behind bars.
It does rather suggest that Sylvester died in prison of his tuberculosis.
An outlaw, rotting in a cell, coughing up blood. It's a sad and sorry tale. But it seems our thirst for Old West mythology can never be quenched. And so, Sylvester's sad story is transformed.
Sylvester can be anybody we want him to be, and I want him to be a gunslinger and a gambler, and I want him to get into a gunfight and get bested.
And so a disease disappears. A common thief becomes a card shark and a gunfighter. And a John Doe tours the sideshows as a celebrity. Because no matter who Sylvester was in life, in death, he is legend.